Hi, everybody. I'm Gina Hoots, your respiratory therapist health coach.
Hi, I'm Amy, and I'm your exercise physiologist.
And I'm Kelly. I'm your registered respiratory therapist and your health coach. Welcome back to the Cozy Lung Lounge. And our topic today, I believe, is staying well through the winter and through the holidays. So, Gina, did you want to kick us off?
Sure. I am in central Illinois where it is super cold right now. I'm talking about 10 degrees. So it's been really cold outside. I've got asthmatic husband and kids in the household. So we've been working on this winter. Several things that I would recommend would be, keeping healthy. We're going to talk about some eating well. But for sure, when you walk out of your house into the cold air, just breathing in that cold air can cause bronchospasm. And a bronchospasm is really that tight wheezing that you might feel. And so it can take your breath away, that cold air. And so having a scarf or something over your nose and mouth can really be helpful. Even pulling up your shirt, while you're walking outside, be helpful because that cold air can really hit your lungs and cause a problem. Coughing, tightness, and wheezing. What about you guys?
Would you recommend, Gina, that if for somebody who's a known asthmatic or a known COPD person, for example, that has a reactive airways when they walk outside in the cold, should they make a habit of taking the hit off their inhaler before they head outside?
And so I wouldn't make a habit of that. However, you want to really get to knowing your body. Most people that have asthma are going to be on some sort of controller medicine. So taking your controller medicine regularly will be really important. If you need your rescue inhaler, definitely have it with you. But I wouldn't just go straight to the medicine. Try some other things that might prevent the problems from happening first. So if you know that it's cold and it's going to be bothering you, try to warm and humidify your air before you breathe it in. So try to take the steps that you can to prevent problems rather than grabbing that albuterol rescue inhaler so frequently.
During COVID, one of the things that we did while we were snowboarding is we had to wear masks on the ski slope. And as somebody who struggles sometimes with their breathing, that was actually a big help. Of course, everybody's like, I don't want to have to wear a mask outside on the ski slope. But I was like, this is actually really great. It really helps with my breathing, and it made it a lot more comfortable to be out there. So even, from a standpoint of a 23, 22-year-old back in the day, it was always really helpful, and it helped my breathing just be a little bit more comfortable outside. So I think across the board, definitely for our pulmonary patients, but just for anybody who just feels like it's really irritating when they go outside in the cold with their breathing, wearing a mask or something to cover your face is always really helpful.
I've seen some really nice neck gaiters, some fleece neck gaiters, and now they come in all kinds of colors and stuff. They're not that expensive, and Christmas is coming, the holidays are coming, so put that on your Santa's list, or if you're looking to buy something for someone in your family who has COPD or asthma, fashionable neck gaiter might be a fun thing to get for them.
Absolutely.
With the cold weather, there seems to be some other things that you might have, like ice. That would be for mobility. What do you recommend, Amy, for walking on ice?
Don't. If you can see it and you can avoid it, just really be careful. I mean, there's not a lot to do if you hit ice. So the key is just to be really, really cautious, especially if you're going out early in the morning and maybe it sprinkled just a little bit. The ground was warm enough for it to thaw, and then it froze again. So the biggest thing is just watching out for that black ice and just being careful with it, because the last thing you want is to have a fall. So honestly, the biggest thing for ice is just to try to avoid it at all costs and wear really good shoes when you're outside in the winter. Sometimes I like to wear my hiking boots throughout the winter if I know that it's going to be a little bit icier or a little bit snowy, and that really helps me as well have good traction.
We don't have that ice problem out here in the desert, unfortunately, but it does rain out here quite a bit, especially in the springtime, and it can get very slippery out there on the concrete. So being careful. What about another thing with the cold weather? going in and out of places. Let's say you're out running errands and it's cold outside, but it's really hot inside the store. And then you go back outside and it's cold. And then you go into a coffee shop and it's hot. And then you go back outside and it's cold, and all this back and forth. What could anybody do to kind of regulate or abate the symptoms of what goes on when you keep changing from hot to cold to humid to dry to hot to cold?
Well, from my perspective, the first thing I would say is layers of clothes, so that you can take them off and put them back on. And it may be a pain, but if you're more comfortable, that is what's most important. So layers.
Kelly, I've been there here in central Illinois, so much swings of weather all of the time. And so I can understand that we're in a store shopping and that heavy coat on, and you do get really hot and can't breathe. And so when you're in a store that might be a larger store with a shopping cart, you can take your coat off, put it in the shopping cart. You can hold onto your shopping cart for some extra stability to help with your breathing too, if you're one of those that really likes to lean on something. But Amy's right. Those layers are really helpful, because you want to be able to take that winter coat off while you're shopping for your groceries, and then put it back on before you go out in the car to get them unloaded.
You know, Gina, I'm glad you mentioned that tripod position. Some people do that naturally, and some people need to be taught the tripod position. But I would just be careful of leaning on something that's on wheels, such as a cart. So I know a lot of people will lean against a counter or a desk or something. And when you do that, it literally kind of spreads the rib cage and gives you a little bit more lung space, if you will, to get a good deep breath. And then make sure that you're doing your pursed lip and diaphragmatic breathing and exhaling all of that stale air. But if you're leaning on a shopping cart, just please be very, very careful that it doesn't get away from you, because I've seen that happen.
Oh my.
All right, you mentioned eating. Anything, holiday eating?
Holiday eating. I'm going to let Kelly talk a little bit more about this, because she is really up on some of this really good nutrition advice. But three big things. When you fill your belly too full, it's going to push up on your lungs and make it harder to breathe. So smaller meals might be easier. Foods that might be too rich. So you want to watch that you're not having too many carbohydrates. I'm going to let Kelly talk more about that, but healthy food and plenty of hydration too. So get water. I'm lucky that in my new office, I have a hot water dispenser close to me. So I've been drinking hot tea in the wintertime. And so that helps with the hydration and the warmth. What about some hard nutrition information, Kelly?
It's really tough over the holidays, because if you're going to someone else's house to eat, you're kind of at their mercy in terms of what they're making or not making. So if you're up for it, volunteer to make something that you know you can eat. So for example, maybe you have food allergies. Maybe you've been told stay away from dairy. Maybe you've been told stay away from, too much sugar, too much sodium. You know what you need to do for your diet. So if you've been, for example, told you really need to curb your sodium intake, because eating too much salt will just make you swell up sometimes. You just retain fluid, and then that's not good for anybody's breathing. That's very hard on your heart. Maybe volunteer to make your version of stuffing or something. If you're trying to stay away from sugar, maybe bring your version of a low sugar dessert. If you're not up for making anything and you're just kind of at their mercy, just drink a lot of water so you feel full and you don't feel like having one of each of the pieces of, 3 different kind of pies there are. Just have one, pick one, and stick with it, and you will feel so much better.
And hot teas can also help you stay a little bit more full as well, especially if you have them before your meal. So that could be another great way. You could just bring a little tea bag and have a nice cup of hot tea. Plus, it'll keep your throat nice and warm and get it wet again after being outside in the cold.
I have 2 big problems with holiday eating. Number one, I don't have time to cook things appropriately. So I'm kind of at the mercy, running from this to this to this, not feeding myself well. And then when I'm with somebody else, they might get offended if I don't eat the foods that they think are really special to the occasion. What would you recommend?
I think you just have to explain that you are under doctor's care and they have advised you to go low sugar or low sodium or low whatever. And you just have to say, please don't be offended. This looks absolutely delicious, but I can't do it. My doctor says if I don't curb my sodium, make up something bad's going to happen. If I don't curb my sugar intake, they're really worried about my glucose levels. If I don't curb my calorie intake, then I get really, really full, and then I have a really hard time breathing. This is a good segue into making sure that your family kind of understands what's going on with you and your lungs and your lung disease, because a lot of times when you have COPD or asthma or even ILD, when we go out in public and we go out with family and friends, what do? We put on our best face, right? Everything's fine. I'm good. It's all good. I can do anything. Don't worry about me. But the reality is at some point we really need to sit down with our families, our friends, our loved ones and say, this is really a problem for me. And I know how special this is to you, or that occasion is to you, or, gift giving, or I don't know, something. But, my doctor has very firmly recommended that I don't do these certain things. So as my friends and family, I'm going to ask you to help me stick with this so that I feel my best all the time.
Very good. I like that advice.
Absolutely. And most of the time, your family will completely understand. I don't eat red meat or pork because it really hurts my stomach. And so that was kind of a conversation I had to have when I first started, dating my boyfriend and going to my family and just saying, hey, this really, really bothers me. So I've got to stop eating it. So it became this thing where, I go over there for dinner and they make a little chicken breast on the side or something else that I can eat when everybody else is doing steak, so that I have something. And sometimes I bring my own frozen turkey patties, different things like that is really helpful for me. So if you have some sort of kind of food allergy or something that you really have to stay away from, a lot of times family will understand and they'll try to accommodate. If not, it's always good to have an option at home that you can just say, oh, well, I'll just bring this. It's not a big deal. And that's always worked for me as well.
Absolutely. I don't eat beef either. So when my friends say, come over, we're having a barbecue, blah, 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 it's like, okay. And I just make veggie patties and I bring them over. They're already cooked and just throw them on the grill. It's done. It's ready. Nobody has to do any extra work. Nobody has to do anything. Just know that I'm not going to eat any beef because for the same reason, it doesn't like me and I don't like it either.
Now I'm over here. I find this is strange that I've also quit eating beef for the most part. And I live in an area where there's a lot of cattle. I even have fresh Illinois beef in my freezer. But when I started thinking about the prize winning cattle, I kind of lost my taste for it. But we were talking about some healthy living. The more you eat healthy and find things that do fit for you, a big salad with pumpkin seeds in it, maybe some blueberries, all kinds of different things in there. That 20 years ago would have been very strange for me to eat. But as I've learned that they taste good, putting better oils on it, so using olive oil and avocado oil instead of the seed oils that you find, it tastes delicious. And I'm finding that I really don't like foods that have chemicals in them now. I can really taste the chemicals more than I used to be able to. So it's baby steps, little by little. Maybe you replace your French fries with a bowl of vegetable soup. Most people like vegetable soup. Things like that, little swaps really help to go forward in the healthy eating when you're just learning. I read some articles recently in the COPD Foundation Journal that talked about nutrition and lung disease. And I was just really blown away by it. And so I'll give you a really quick idea of what it was there was all these people that they've been looking at for the last 30 years, and they collect all of this data. So stuff's been ongoing. And so they looked at all these people, and we're just going to make it easy and say, I had 4 groups of people that all smoked a packet of cigarettes a day. So everybody had the same smoking history. But then they looked at the diets that they ate over the previous 20 years. Those that ate the anti-inflammatory diet, also known as the Mediterranean diet, fruits and vegetables, they had the lowest rates of lung disease. And those with the worst diets had higher rates of lung disease. And these are in people that smoked the same amounts of cigarettes. And so we are really finding that nutrition will protect your body in so many ways that we never knew before.
Absolutely. It's just very important, just the least amount of ingredients possible. If you're picking something off of a shelf and it's got a long list of ingredients, just don't even read it, put it back. And it's interesting because I think for a lot of my pulmonary rehab patients, they tell me, oh, I don't cook anymore. You know, I cooked for 40 years for my husband, 3 kids, on and on and on. You know, I've retired from cooking. Okay, so then what are you eating? And they're eating all fast food, restaurant food, convenience food, frozen food, canned food, a lot of sodium, a lot of sugar, a lot of chemicals. And I say, you know, just even if you just cut out one of those things, you know, either, I don't know, pick one thing to cut out and make yourself just once a week, make your own salad dressing, or once a week, make a smoothie. You know, instead of having those Eggo waffles or whatever those are, you know, just the one thing that you make that's pure and you know what's in it.
One thing that I did learn was that there is tons of sodium in the liquid that's in like canned vegetables. And so one of the things you can do if you don't have a lot of time, if you like to use canned vegetables because they last longer or they're easy to cook, is just drain all that stuff out and rinse them really good, because that, I think, gets off the majority of the sodium. Of course, there's still going to be some in the vegetables, but doing little things like that can at least help reduce sodium and make those kind of things a little bit easier and healthier for you.
Absolutely. One of the easiest things I think that I know people like to make in the winter when it's cold is soup. Canned soup. If you don't like to make it from scratch, it's canned soup, which has so much sodium, and people don't really like to rinse the broth out because that's kind of the good part. So what can people do to not get so much sodium? If you buy a lower sodium version of a canned soup or canned vegetable, for example, you can always add a little tiny pinch of salt back, but that's still probably going to add up to less sodium than the actual full version of the soup or the vegetable that's had so much sodium added just as a preservative more than anything.
I have found something really strange for us Midwesterners. We don't eat lentils. And I know, you know, California, you're going to eat lentils for sure out there. But I'm finding it doesn't take very long to cook a fresh pot of soup from scratch. Just saute a couple of vegetables, throw in those lentils, and boil them. And it just is so delicious and filling. And it doesn't take very long. So I challenge you guys to figure out what a lentil is and eat it out there in blogging world, because I was really surprised. I like it. So let's see. We talked a lot about keeping up, you know, with the freezing weather outside. And I've really noticed some different conversations, whether it's a Facebook group or other sort of patient groups. And I also had a patient talk to me today when I tried to call and schedule a walking test in this office. He said, I cannot come until the weather gets warmer because my machine doesn't work. And we got to talking more, and the batteries in extremely cold weather have a very short life. And so you may have to carry extra batteries with you. You may have to switch over to a standard oxygen tank if your machine is freezing up. I'm not sure how many people have liquid oxygen systems any longer, but those are notorious for freezing up, not from the weather, but from the cold oxygen. And so you really want to make sure that your batteries are in tip-top shape if you are depending on them. I mean, it's really important to have extra things. So in the winter, you know, extra things is always a good thing to have, whether it's supplies in your car or extra batteries for your portable oxygen concentrator.
Definitely, but absolutely keep extra batteries with you. Plug in when you get somewhere where you can plug in and conserve your batteries. But I hadn't heard that either of cold freezing up those batteries, but it's good to know.
How about where can we exercise in the wintertime? We can't go outside and walk around the block. I may not be able to get out to my pulmonary rehab place because it, you know, ice, cold. What are some options that I can do inside my own cozy home?
Absolutely. So not only, you know, sometimes it's just too cold to be outside, but the other thing that happens, especially in the winter, and if you live in the mountains or somewhere up north, is you have snow and you have ice, and you may not have reliable transportation, or it may just be too much to get out and deal with. So it's really important to have some sort of exercise option for at home. Of course, the biggest thing is to make sure that you clear it with your physician, exercising, whatever you're doing. But it is good to have some sort of plan for at home, whether it's resistance bands or a few little weights or a cycle. Anything like that is great to do at home, and especially staying inside. So you could have a yoga mat and do some floor yoga or do chair yoga. There's all sorts of different resistance activities that you can do with resistance bands or little weights. Of course, there's always body weight exercises and all of those kind of things you may have learned in physical therapy, you may have learned in your in-person cardiopulmonary rehab, or you may have learned it from an online program like ours. So there's lots of different ways to exercise at home that will keep you a little bit more comfortable. And those cycles are great to use if you need a little bit of endurance and you're stuck inside in the winter. I always tell people to get one of those little portable cycles, sit on the couch, watch a good Christmas movie, and just cycle with those feet.
I've recently found that the one of the hospitals here in town has closed down their pulmonary rehab. Can you tell us more about the virtual pulmonary rehab option?
Absolutely. So some programs do shut down in the winter, or they have to close down if there's a big snowstorm. Certain pulmonary rehabs that are in person do actually offer some online, I do believe, and I think it depends, program to program what they have available. But if your pulmonary rehab does not have something available, there are online programs like ours where it's a monthly subscription and you log in and you can follow along on a weekly basis from beginner all the way up to advanced. And it may be a really good option so that by the time you get to summer, you can go outside, you can walk around, and you're really nice and trained, and your lungs will be much happier outside in the summer.
And to clarify, we can find our pulmonary rehab program at bluezone.health.
Yes.
And the Amy is our exercise physiologist, so you'll get to see and learn from her quite a bit.
Yes, you'll hear my voice and you'll see my face all day, every day, if that's what you do. So if you get tired of me, I apologize.
And don't forget the coaching.
I was going to say, if we have, so somebody like me, I have a membership at the Y, I never go. So if I'm not motivated to get my pulmonary rehab done every day, are there other options?
Well, I think there's individual coaching, and then if you'd rather have a couple of people in that group with you and to help each other out, there's group coaching available. Either one, Gina, myself, we are coaches, respiratory health coaches. And but as your respiratory health coach, we're going to encourage you to do the exercise portion with Amy. That's very, very important. And a lot of people say, well, I really don't exercise. I really can't. But that's the one thing that's really going to help you to feel a lot better. I know it doesn't seem like it, but exercise with COPD, asthma, or ILD, that is the one thing that will help you feel your best. And then pair that with the coaching, a couple of tips, tricks, and tools, things to ask your doctor, some trackers, things like that. Yes, if you start now, then by summer, you will be in fine shape.
So group coaching, while we're not going to be exercising in it, we can really talk a lot about troubles you might be having with exercise. It may be just, we're all going to exercise, in the morning, and then we're going to meet in the evening for our group coaching program and just hold each other accountable.
Absolutely. That's what coaching will do for you. And then the other piece of that with Amy is the exercise part, exercising safely, exercises that you can actually do. Amy will make sure that you could do them. The conditioning is the most important part. That's what will help you breathe better. And it takes a long time to figure out how those two work together. But the more you can condition your muscles to use oxygen efficiently, the less breathless you will feel. So that's why exercise is your friend, because you will be using your oxygen to breathe and not to try to fuel muscles that are oxygen hoggers, is what I call them.
Even somebody with normal lungs has this problem. If I go to an exercise class right now, I'm going to be very short of breath because I haven't walked up and down the stairs and did any aerobics for a very long time. However, if I stick with it 2 to 3 times a week, next month I won't be as short of breath. In 2 months, I'll be able to keep up with the whole class. And I know that from experience, and it just takes time to get your body back in shape.
But it can be done at any age.
What would you guys recommend on indoor humidifiers for dry winter weather?
I like the ones personally. I think humidifiers are important, especially if you've got your heater running all the time and it's drying out all the air that you have. So there are certain brands of humidifiers that you can clean more easily than others. Some of them come with tablets that you can put in there. Some of them you've got to get in there with vinegar. Some of them I would just, if you're looking to buy one, I would look for one that's easy to clean. If you go to clean it, and you should clean it, I say at least every other day, at least look at it. And if you see any black specks of anything, green, blue, yellow, any colors of any kind, I would say clean it really well with vinegar. Some of them come with a little brush to brush off the plaque off of the ultrasonic plate, if that's the type that you're using. Another way is to just swish your finger around in there in the little reservoir where the water is. If it feels slimy, dump it all out, clean it real good, wipe it dry, let it dry before you use it again. Because otherwise you're breathing all of that unknown gunk, whatever that is, that's in there, and you don't want to do that. So it's a lot of work to keep those clean, but it's worth it.
Did one of you want to explain a little bit more about why indoor air gets so dry in the winter?
So indoor air in the wintertime can get super dry. Mostly we've got outdoor air that's super cold, and so cold air does not hold much water in it. So your outdoor air is pretty dry. On the inside, we're trying to heat your home, so you've got your furnace pumping out all of that dry air. But there's not any water to add to that furnace unless you have a humidifier. There's some furnaces that have those kinds of attachments. But for the most part, your heater is taking that cold, dry air, warming it, but not adding any extra humidity. Now, in the summertime, you go outside, the air is hot and it's hard to breathe. It's full of water because hot air can hold more water. Your hot air inside your house could hold that water. There just isn't any to put in it. So that's why it gets extra dry in the wintertime. You'll notice that your feet, your skin, just really everything gets pretty dry. More lotion is important. Drinking more water is important in the wintertime, especially if you don't have that humidifier. Taking in as much water as your doctor recommends is really good for you.
And as a child, and even now sometimes, I tend to get really bad nosebleeds in the winter because my nose just gets really dry from the dry air. So one thing that, other than a humidifier, which I always had, nasal saline spray, which kept my nose a lot more moist. And so that was something that I used once a day, generally at night, because that's when my nosebleeds would happen. That really, really helped me. So if there's anybody out there who does have nosebleeds, that may be something that would be helpful to have in the winters.
Can you use saline rinse with oxygen? Yes. So that is good. They traditionally don't want you to use anything with oxygen that would be flammable. So Vaseline is made from petroleum jelly. It could be flammable. I mean, seriously, it's probably not going to catch on fire, but you wouldn't want to put petroleum jelly in your nose for flammability and because you don't want to inhale oils. But saline spray is perfectly safe for oxygen wearers.
Gina, and Amy, there is a product that they can use that it's not petroleum based, because you were talking about dry air and nosebleeds. A lot of patients on oxygen, that is the dry gas going right in there, and they get very sensitive inside the nose and right on the skin of the nose. And I can't off the top of my head think of the name of the product that they can use.
Is it Air, AYR?
Maybe that's it.
You're right. It's a saline nasal gel, and you can get it at all of your standard pharmacies. And it's a gel, so it stays put a little bit more, it looks like, than saline.
Perfect. And another thing too, it depends a lot of time what kind of heating systems people have at home, so that indoor air gets really dry. And then we add, for example, a fireplace to that. Okay, which is really, really drying, but maybe some people have a central heating system. Maybe some people have those wall gas heaters. And if you have a wall gas heater, I believe the gas company will come out and check those for you twice a year. Just have them come check them, make sure nothing's leaking, it's not outputting a lot of soot or something that it shouldn't be putting out. Just have those checked.
That really brings up a really important safety concern, Kelly. Carbon monoxide. And so there are people that die every year in every community. And even somebody very close to me, I know had a parent who died from carbon monoxide exposure. And so that really is most often if you have a power outage and you're running a generator. So really watch for that. But if you're having any leakage in your heating system, you could have carbon monoxide in your house. You'll get sleepy. Your nose is going to get cherry red, and your blood will be an odd color when they draw it. But really, if you're getting disoriented and sleepy and your skin is bright cherry red, you need to get outside and really have that system checked for carbon monoxide, particularly in the wintertime.
And just bear in mind too, if when it starts getting cold, really cold, if you call the gas company, they may not be able to get to you for 3, 4, 5 days, depending on the weather and their workload, their backlog, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have any kind of an inkling that your system needs to be checked, or if it's been a while since it's been checked, call them now and make sure that they come and have a look at your system.
And that kind of brings us into the winter emergency kit. So other than things like our saline spray for your nose or the air, what are some other things that may be really helpful for an emergency kit, especially for our pulmonary patients?
So if we go through the big five, number one would be medications. What do we need for medications? Make sure you have your rescue inhaler. Make sure you have enough supplies for at least a week. Medications. Number two would be oxygen. What do we need to know about oxygen?
Are they on a concentrator? Or do they need an extra battery? Do they even have any tanks? A lot of people don't keep extra tanks at home, or they have a dozen extra tanks at home.
Right.
In an emergency, how many could you really take with you?
Take with you. You wouldn't have thought about taking oxygen tanks with you, but we recently had some emergencies around the country where oxygen delivery had been affected.
Or if you're evacuating, say, for a wildfire or something, and you've got to get out, you've got to get those tanks and get them with you, because there's probably not going to be anywhere to get anymore after that. So we have medications, we have oxygen.
How about CPAP machines? Those are generally electrical driven also. So if you're dependent on machines that are hooked to electricity, having a backup generator or a plan to go to a neighbor's would be really important.
Well, and with that backup generator, you think that, like we talked about, a carbon monoxide detector would be really important to have in your house and make sure you have before the winter hits, and you may need that generator.
How about candles in the drawer with your matches? That's a no-no with somebody with oxygen. So you'll want to have batteries in your flashlights, because you really don't want to light candles, particularly if you're an oxygen wearer, in the dark.
Definitely check your batteries on your flashlights about every 6 months or so.
And our solar-powered flashlights are some of the really great ones to have. There's one called a Lucy Lantern that's an inflatable solar-powered flashlight that's really helpful to have, that we use when we go backpacking and camping.
And just some blankets. Make sure that if your power goes out, you can stay warm and that you can breathe, and you have a lifeline to call. So make sure that your friends and family know that you're there with your oxygen or whatever else you might be needing, and have a phone tree set up so somebody can check on you and you can tell them you're okay.
And if you ever did have to evacuate, make sure that you have a bug out bag or a bug out tub. And even if you don't want to keep replacing things in it every 6 months, just put a list in there so that you know what you need to take. And one of the things I would definitely recommend throwing in this backpack or in this tub is your very important papers, the deed to your house, okay, banking information, your password. You know, if you keep your passwords in a little book somewhere, right? Put a copy of that in that. Put all that in a Ziploc bag, and then important phone numbers of people that you need to call. Because if you lose cell service and you end up having to evacuate and you're somewhere at a payphone, I know for me, if my cell phone died, I haven't memorized anybody's phone number in years. And so just writing down those important phone numbers, having those with you. But Also, if you had to evacuate, blankets, most definitely, all of your oxygen, your medications, but even a change of clothing. What if you end up having to stay in a hotel or a friend's house, or, you know, even, God forbid, one of those, what do you call them?
Evacuation shelters.
Evacuation shelters. Thank you. You know, what if you had to sleep on a cot for 2 nights? You know, so some toiletries, some pajamas, some clean clothes, things like that. Just put them in the tub just so that you have them. And then if it's time to go for whatever reason, you grab the tub, you grab your backpack, you're out of there, and you're set for at least a couple days so you can figure out what's going on and what you need to do next.
I really like your idea of the list on top, because I can't pack my medicines in there and have it ready to go because I don't have that many medicines. Or I may, you know, so I might have an extra toothbrush, but I may not have an extra inhaler the way that the insurance companies work. Right. So having a list to say, okay, here's all my other things, but also grab these 10 things. That's really helpful. I like that.
Especially when it's one of those last minute things, you know, somebody's banging on your door telling you, get out, get out, get out. Okay. And I got all my albuterol, but oh wait, I forgot my nebulizer. Okay. You know, I got my oxygen.
Or your controller medicine.
Yes. You know, or I have my oxygen tank and my concentrator, but I don't have a nasal cannula. You know, things that go together. That's a good reason to put your list together, keep it on top or in that tub so that you know when the time comes, okay, I know I've got everything, the bare minimum I need to get out.
And when you think about winter emergencies, one of the biggest things you think of is snowstorms. And if you are somewhere where you frequently experience, you know, power outages, or you experience issues in the winter with being able to get the materials you need, it may be good to have kind of a plan. So if you had a son or a daughter or a family member who doesn't live, you know, in the mountains or wherever it is that you will probably lose power, you could always plan ahead if you had that available and just say, hey, can I come stay with you before this hits, so that you have your plan in place and you can just go ahead and get out of there so you don't end up in a more emergency situation.
And always keep your car 3/4 full of gas at least.
Absolutely. I think the only thing left would be talking about not getting sick during the holidays.
I would say number one thing, stay away from sick people. I know that sometimes the holidays is the only time you get to see your kids and your grandkids and so on and so forth, but if one of them's got a runny nose, if you have COPD, asthma, anything going on with your lungs, you're much more susceptible to catching something than other people. So other people will say, oh yeah, you know, I got 3 kids, this one's number 3, number 1 and number 2 had the runny nose, now it's number 3. But for you and taking care of your health, that might be a very different story. Stay away from sick people.
What are the vaccines we need to have every year? I know we need to have flu shots. You hear a lot about COVID shots, but are there any other things I should get every year other than my flu shot?
This year, they're highly recommending the RSV if you are an at-risk person. So define an at-risk person. Someone with a chronic disease should probably think about getting an RSV shot. If you're in contact with little kids, I would think about getting an RSV shot. I did not take it this year because I'm not in contact with a lot of little kids anymore. All my nieces and nephews are grown. But RSV is recommended. They're recommending a couple of other things as well. Make sure you're up to date on your Tdap shots. Make sure you're up to date on your shingles. I went to the doctor the other day. Well, you need this, you need this, you need that. And I said, I don't work in the hospital anymore. I don't need this. And she said, if you go anywhere outside barefoot, or, you know, if you're go walking on the beach in the sand or anything else, you need a Tdap shot. I said, all right.
Tell me what's a Tdap?
Diphtheria, tetanus, so Tdap, tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis.
So you're talking about a tetanus shot for your feet, but pertussis does go around a lot.
Yes, it
What's
does.
What's the name for pertussis?
Whooping cough.
Whooping cough, yes.
Yeah. So if you haven't had your Tdap in 10 years, ask your doctor. They would probably have you do that. Talk to your doctor about the RSV. If you're around little kids, they'll probably recommend it. Talk to your doctor, flu shot, most definitely. And talk to your doctor about a COVID booster. A lot of people feel like COVID's kind of gone by the wayside now and they don't need it. But it's still around.
I had it in July and I was sick. I was down for a week and another second week to recover. And I'm not usually that down. So no, I had it this year, and it was still pretty virulent.
It's very much still out there. And another one that's really big this year is walking pneumonia. And it is contagious. And are there pneumonia vaccines out there?
There are definitely pneumonia vaccines that you should take. Even Alex says you should take your shot, right? Take your pneumovax.
Well, I've had a great time with you guys tonight in our cozy lung lounge. This has been lots of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too. So hopefully we've given you some helpful hints and tidbits of information and sparked your interest in maybe joining us for a individual coaching or a group coaching session or an exercise session with Amy. We would love to have you. And think about if you have, if you're listening in and you have a family member that's got COPD or asthma or interstitial lung disease or anything going on with their lungs, maybe the gift of coaching would be something to think about that would really be helpful for them.
If you're watching us on YouTube, I'd like to invite you to like, subscribe, and actually comment with some questions of things you might have for future episodes for us. That would be really helpful. We'd be happy to hear from you.
The holidays are supposed to be fun and cheery and spent with family. So just please be careful and be safe and stay healthy. Use some of these tips and tricks to really keep yourself feeling good so you can really enjoy the holiday season.
We'll see you on the next episode. Signing off.
Thanks for relaxing with us in the Cozy Lung Lounge, where we're all about helping you breathe better and living your best life. Don't forget to subscribe and follow for more insights, tips, and inspiration on your journey to cardiorespiratory health. Until next time, breathe well and thrive.